Lotus wins.
Apparently, White Lotus wins. Hello. Welcome to Mortal Kombat X. And today we're gonna be talking about variations. Now, this is not a video from 2015, and we're not actually talking about variations. But as you can clearly see, we are playing MKX. And what we're talking about is an incident that recently happened, and how it represents a bigger problem, which, if you know what the title comes from, then you're already aware. But if you aren't, that's also fine, because we're gonna be going through all of that. Don't know who I want to play here.
Raiden.
So, what has happened recently is there was okay. I'm trying to
Fight.
bundle this into the most, complete explanation that I can here. So with the most recent game, Mortal Kombat 11, it allowed, for the first time, custom variations. However, you could not use said custom variations in competitive. It just was not allowed until Ultimate released, and that made it to where you could use them not just online, but apparently in real life tournaments. So in a recent tournament that I guess was official, that was overseen by NRS or something to that extent, someone got disqualified, and the person they were facing went on to get a bye in the tournament, and it was a whole mess. Everything just kind of stopped, and this player was punished and didn't even know why until after the fact. And rightfully so, you would imagine that this was a big thing, a really serious thing that happened, and it is, but not for the reason you would automatically assume. So the problem came with their custom variation name, which read, "Why did NRS do this?" This was a playful joke And like, not even really a criticism, but that's how they took it. So a slight criticism of how broken custom variations could make a character. And he was punished for this,
Raiden wins.
which is absolutely ridiculous. Here's where I'd want to bring up another point. Very loosely related, but I think it goes together nicely. Big Mortal Kombat YouTuber, History Behind the Warrior, recently did a collaboration with former MK writer Sean Kittleston, where he was going through scrapped drafts of the MK11 story, and he was very like dismissive of all the scrapped ideas and was like, these aren't even good, they're bad, they couldn't, wouldn't, and shouldn't have been what the game was. But of course he was very supportive and appreciative of the MK11 story itself, being like, you're lucky that you got this, and you know, the best thing that we could have got, we did get. Stuff of that nature. And I found it odd. But maybe that was just his way of, like, being professional and not stepping on toes. Because he doesn't work for them anymore. But I get wanting to be professional and, like, trying to stay nice. You don't want to, like, just rip into a former employer. But I found it off, to say the least. And then coupled with this, which happened, I don't know how recently it happened, but I only just heard the news about it. It's just one of those things where it's like, this gives a bad image and sets a really bad precedent that should not in any way become norm. Like, this is something that really can't be swept. Well, it can. I say it shouldn't be swept under the rug. Because what I get out of this is NRS can't take even the slightest of criticisms. And they're gonna, you know, make sure that they control as best they can for people to not criticize their product. And that's extremely scary, because you already have a huge portion of the fan base that just loves everything that NRS does. Luckily, there is another, like, sizable portion that is very loud in their, I don't want to say hatred, but in their criticism of Mortal Kombat and their stories and just WB and their business model as a whole. But if they continue this and they get like more drastic with it, we're going to get to a point where NRS can control the narrative so much that it silences criticisms. And that is the exact opposite of what we want. And like I said earlier, it can't be ignored. Can't be swept under the rug. And that's an explanation as to why, which I'm pretty sure everyone should agree with. But here's an explanation as to how, which I'm scared that nothing will actually come of this, and that's a really concerning thought, in my opinion. But what they could do is they could go back to not using custom variations, not allowing them in tournaments. They could allow custom variations, but then not allow custom names, even though that's still kinda... like, all of this really is sidestepping the bigger issue of... sidestepping the bigger issue of them trying to silence criticism. And what... this is taking a bit of a detour, but what I find really interesting is... it wasn't even really a criticism, it was more of a joke to say, like, oh, how... I can't believe they gave us the power to make characters, so broken. But, like, even prior to custom variations, that's how competitive is. That's why, like, when you go to tournaments and you watch, you know, the finals of the tournament, it's usually dominated by people playing specific characters that, like, favor competitive play the most because they have, you know, combos with high damage, or, like, easy to hit special moves with high damage, and you'll usually see them using those same few combos and moves. And this player was using a particularly broken custom variant of Shiva. And that's all it was. It was a joke, a commentary on that, and they couldn't even handle that much.
Round 2, fight.
But going back to my point, they could get rid of custom variations in tournament play. They could get rid of custom variation names in tournament play. They could also, like, get rid of custom variations entirely. Because another thing that, like, kind of makes the why did NRS do this a valid criticism to an extent, and an actual one as opposed to just a joke. You know, if customization is part of their, like, progression moving forward, how are they going to extend to that? Like, are they going to give us more slots to add more moves that cancel each other out, or like, you know, that...
Round one. Fight.
My point being, I'm struggling to put it into words. But I think you get the general idea of, like, with the model they have, it only opens up the possibility to make characters, like, more broken. Or at the very least, you know, a skilled player will find a way to make a character more broken than they would be by default.
Round two. Fight.
So, if that is the idea, that, like, they start allowing, you know, more moves, or, like, more, you know, they start adding modifiers, or, like, you can change combos somehow, like, on a base level, just, like, on the base surface of having a fun experience, I'm all for more customization. But when we're talking about a competitive environment, that's where, you know, the line becomes grayed.
Round one. Fight.
So if that's their direction moving forward, they might legitimately have to consider, like, removing that entirely. Because even with the custom variations as they stand in 11, it took them like a year, 2 years, just to make it to where those could work in competitive. And I don't really keep up with all the details, and so I don't know what they did to, like what happened in that time to make custom variations all of a sudden tournament viable. But the point is, they went ahead with it. And the more they change, the more criticism they're gonna get, and they just have to accept that.
Raiden wins.
And I don't think after, you know, I don't know how long of a life MK11 really has. But let's say it goes on until, like, the next Injustice
Fight.
or whatever NRS makes. Let's say it even goes on until the next Mortal Kombat game. Then people more and more are going to be used to custom variations in tournaments. Now, what if you make, like, a small change so that you can do more with custom variations, but then you say, oh, well, you have to wait another, like, year or so, like, for the next expansion or final edition, so that we make it viable again. People are gonna be upset at that, and then there's gonna be some kind of outcry, regardless. Like, there might be outcry even if there's just, you know, the changes themselves that make it broken. But then especially if people aren't allowed to use that immediately. It's just one of those things where, like, some people might brush this off as nothing, but it's really a lot in a variety of ways.
Raiden wins.
So yeah, there's a couple things that they can do. Make custom variations not viable in tournaments. Don't allow custom variation names, or get rid of custom variations entirely. And overall, they need to allow criticism of their games, because that, what had happened, the controversy, again, wasn't even really a criticism, and yet they jumped so hard on that as to disqualify that, competitive player, which is absolutely ridiculous and sets an awful precedent for the future. I hope this reaches some kind of audience, and hopefully that audience agrees with me. And what I hope for the most is that this doesn't get swept under the rug. So thank you for watching, and I really hope NRS gets their act together soon.